Last week, my sweet French prince left Burnley to go and sign for Ange Postecoglu's Tottenham. Now, if any of you have followed me for a while on YouTube or any other social medias, you'll know just how big of a fan of Wilson Odobert I am. Now, I do understand that this signing may be a little bit underwhelming or a little bit confusing for a few Tottenham fans. However, after the performance against Leicester City on the opening game for Tottenham's 24-25 Premier League season, I believe that Wilson Odobert could be the solution to Tottenham's problems. In today's video, I'm going to look at a few key moments in that Leicester game that showcase where Odobert could make a difference in this Spurs team, and I'm also just going to go into a general bit of analysis into the strengths and weaknesses of the 19-year-old star. I think it's best if I start by building a nice little profile for you guys about Wilson Odobert, whilst also looking into his strengths and weaknesses before we go into how Wilson Odobert translates into Postecoglu's team. Odobert started his career in the PSG Academy, working his way through the youth system until he left to ES Troyes AC in the lower half of Ligue 1. During his time there, he impressed with his technical ability on the ball, his ability to take on a man, and also racked up 6 goal contributions in roughly 20 league starts. His performances in France then got him a move to newly promoted Burnley for around €11 million, but despite being highly rated, he saw himself limited to just 162 minutes of league football until the 9th of December, when he was finally given his chance to consistently play for Vincent Kompany's Burnley. Now, how did his time at Burnley go? What were his strengths? What were his weaknesses? What position did he play? Well, I'm going to tell you. Odobert first came into the Burnley team as a left-sided winger. His job was to often hold wide areas and allow the right-sided winger to come a bit more central, as we see by the heat maps of both Odobert and Mike Trésor from Wilson Odobert's full league debut for Burnley. You see here that Trésor seems to be coming slightly more central, whereas Odobert is popping up in slightly wider areas. Playing this wide allowed the French forward to showcase one of his best talents, in my opinion, that being taken on a man 1v1. When Odobert is isolated, he can be incredibly hard to stop. His ability to shift his body weight rapidly, accelerate quickly, whilst also being able to slow down incredibly fast too, means that he can shift inside and out seamlessly. This is shown by the fact he averaged 2.27 successful take-ons per 90, seeing him sit in the top 1% of midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues for successful take-ons, and if you also want to compare him to forwards, he sat in the top 2% of forwards in Europe's top 5 leagues for successful take-ons. When you combine his excellent ability to manipulate the ball and go past the defender, with also the fact that he is ball-footed practically and can deliver a brilliant cross on either his left foot or his right foot, he looks to be, in my opinion, that perfect dribbly winger that Tottenham and Ange Postecoglu have been looking for. However, not too long into Odobert's time in the starting 11, things changed, and he took up a new role as Burnley's number 10 and became not only just the real creative spark in attack, creating the most big chances last season in the whole Burnley squad, but also the direct connect between the midfield and the attack. He really was that kind of link between Burnley playing out from the back, getting stuck in a press, and going forward through the phases and attacking. The best football that I saw from Odobert was definitely in that number 10 role for Burnley. I think it really highlighted his technical ability, which is definitely one of his standout qualities, his first touch, his close control, all that stuff, but it also allowed him to show he's a brilliant ball carrier. He was often given the duty to carry Burnley forward, and he did it very, very well. Last season, Odobert averaged 4.38 progressive carries per 90, seeing him sit in the top 1% of midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues for that stat. He also averaged 0.43 successful take-ons that led to a shot attempt per 90, which again saw him sit in the top 2% of midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues for this stat. And he also averaged 3.26 shot creating actions per 90 as well. So as them stats kind of suggest, he is that creative spark, that little bit of something special at times. When you're in tight areas or in isolated scenarios, he can produce a little bit of magic. Now, he is still only young, but I believe, honestly, at 19 years old, when it comes to taking a man on, carrying the ball forward, and getting into dangerous areas in and around the penalty box, he's arguably one of the best 19-year-olds in Europe at the moment. But what else does he bring besides being really fun to watch? Well, as I said before, he was often the sole link between midfield and attack for Burnley last season, which required him to receive the ball in them tight areas, whether it be under pressure in the second phase, allowing Burnley to come out of their own half, or in the half spaces when trying to break down the opposition's defensive line in and around their penalty box. His ability to receive in tight areas consistently saw him receive an average of 5.28 progressive passes per 90, and this also allowed him to get into central areas to strike the ball on the edge of the area or play through balls. But what we're here for is to talk about how Odobert fits into Tottenham. So how do these attributes that we've briefly discussed in the first portion of the video, how do they translate to an Ange Postecoglu system? Well, against Leicester, almost everything positive came down that left-hand side, which is to be expected when Heung-min Son is there, but it became far too predictable. It meant that Leicester knew they could double up on that Spurs left-hand side without too much fear of whoever was running down the right wing, and therefore it meant again that they could kind of force Son to go down a tunnel and run into the corner flag, and it became much harder for him to really get at players because there was multitude, all these options were pretty much marked. If we look at this frame here, you see that there's pretty much 3 players on the left hand side, and Leicester can go pretty much man to man, barring the fact that they've kind of let Maddison go a little bit. The Leicester defence isn't stretched all that much, and that to me is because they almost know that Brennan Johnson is not going to cause you too many issues in and around the 18-yard box. He's not going to really do too much where he's going to run past 2 or 3 players. Honestly, as a Leicester defence, when you're sitting in a low block, I don't think Brennan Johnson scares many people. If there's open space, better. Tight areas where he's having to take people on carefully, he just doesn't cause too many issues. The Welsh winger is a good ball carrier from deep, as shown by his 4.11 progressive carries per 90, which is solid. He also works hard to win the ball back, but as I already said, when it comes to actually taking players on in dangerous advanced areas, he offers very, very little, shown by his 1.09 successful take-ons per 90. If you were to throw Odobert in this position where Johnson's made a great recovery tackle, he's then got the ball, all this open space, and he can really get at the Leicester defence, I think the end result is completely different. Johnson slows down and eventually loses the ball, whereas I say honestly, Odobert gets his head up, gets running, takes on his man, and at the very minimum puts a good cross into the box, or at least puts in a progressive pass. However, something that would possibly a little bit more new for Odobert would be playing off that right wing. He did it a couple times for Burnley, and to be honest, was pretty good at it, but I think really, as I said before, left wing, and that's the number 10 where he's kind of main roles. So coming in and playing off that right wing could be a little bit, I don't know, new to him, but with playing off both feet, as I've said before, he can produce a brilliant cross on his left foot, can produce an equally as good cross on his right foot, means that I think that it won't take him too long to adjust playing as that right winger in the Tottenham team. We've also got to consider the fact that he didn't get too many assists last season. Well, he didn't really get any at all. He got 2 assists, but he was underperforming his expected assists, and that's because he was supplying Datro Fofana for the majority, well, from January onwards, whereas he'll be going from Datro Fofana to Dominic Solanke. So I really think his numbers could absolutely skyrocket this season. The only weaknesses I can pick out really from his time at Burnley, other than him still being a bit raw, is his lack of strength. He can be pushed off the ball fairly easily and struggles with that sometimes, but he works extremely hard off the ball should he lose possession. I mean, he won the ball in the final third, the 4th most in the whole Burnley squad last season, so although they were absolutely dreadful, I still think that doesn't look too bad for him. So overall, in the whole, I really like this signing of Wilson Odobert. I mean, my Burnley heart doesn't, but looking as trying to look as a neutral looking at this, or from the Tottenham side, I think it's a really positive signing. Obviously, a fairly big fee, but for a 19-year-old, probably going to be a French international one day, who's had a more than good enough season in the Premier League for a dreadful side, I think he will prove to be worth that decent bit of money that Spurs have splashed on him. And I honestly think in that right wing role, give it a few months, come January, I think we'll be sitting there going, wow, Odobert's really made that position his own. So ladies and gents, if you have enjoyed today's video, please do leave a like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell as well if you want to, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.